Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always excited to get into some deep cuts, yeah.
This time we're exploring a mixtape that's honestly kind of legendary, even though it dropped, what, over a decade ago now?
Yeah.
We're talking Capital Steez, AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded.
One of those projects that even all these years later, it still hits hard.
And for folks who maybe aren't as familiar, we're going to break down why this mixtape was so impactful and why it still matters today.
Especially because, the context, it's just so heavy considering Steez passed away so soon after releasing it.
Yeah, just 2 months later. Gives the whole thing this, almost eerie feeling, knowing what we know now.
It's like every lyric is amplified, like you're hearing his thoughts in this really raw, vulnerable way.
Right, from that title, AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded. He's making a statement, even before you press play.
Oh, absolutely. That triple K, it's not subtle. He's connecting it right to the clan,
Like right off the bat, he's not shying away from anything.
And that sets the tone for the whole mixtape, this idea of calling out the corruption, but doing it in this way that's also deeply personal.
Okay, so before we get too deep, let's back up a bit. For someone who's maybe hearing the name Capital Steez for the first time, who was he?
Well, his real name was Courtney Everell Dewar Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn, had a tough upbringing, lost his father pretty young.
Oh, that definitely comes through in his lyrics, that sense of, searching for something.
Yeah, this yearning for connection, meaning, and, you layer on top of that his spirituality.
Which wasn't just one thing.
Exactly. He was raised Christian, but also really got into Rastafarian beliefs.
Okay, so how does that all tie in?
Well, Rastafari, it's not just about personal spirituality, it's about social justice, too.
Right, right.
So that's all feeding into how Steez is viewing the world, the corruption he's calling out. It's not just random anger. It's tied to this whole worldview.
And this reloaded version of the mixtape, it's not just the same stuff repackaged, right?
Yeah.
There's something different about it.
It's like he took the original AmeriKKKan Korruption and went even deeper, especially with the personal stuff.
Like he was really looking inward this time.
Tracks like Evil, Love, man, there's a vulnerability there that was not that common in hip-hop, especially back then.
I mean, he was like 19 when he made this, right?
Yeah, crazy to think about. And you get lines in Black Petunia like, when I look in the mirror, there's a bastard staring back at me.
Oh, wow.
Heavy stuff. You can feel him wrestling with his own identity.
And lyrically, Steez was just on another level.
Oh yeah, his wordplay, it's not just rhymes, it's metaphors on metaphors. He packs so much meaning into every bar.
Got an example for us?
But that's the past. I don't ponder on it anymore. Represents a metaphor of me closing a mental door. That's from Vibratings.
Whoa. Yeah, that's not just rapping, that's poetry.
And it's not just the words, the music itself on this mixtape, it's a whole other layer.
Yeah, the production is amazing. There's jazz influences, then these darker, almost eerie beats.
He worked with some seriously talented producers. Bruce Lee Kicks, Entre producers, even Joey Badass produced some tracks.
Oh, wow, that's early Joey, right?
Yeah, and Nuxilcher's on there too. The range of styles on this thing is wild.
And they really matched the music to the emotion of the track, like on Black Petunia. It's got that haunting feel that just fits the lyrics perfectly.
It's almost like a movie soundtrack in a way.
It's an experience.
Yeah, it's not just background music. It takes you on a journey.
You go from these hard-hitting tracks to these introspective moments. It's like a roller coaster.
He knew exactly what he was doing with the sequencing, too. Like the order of the tracks, it's all intentional.
Oh, absolutely.
You go from the boldness of Capital Steez to the almost desperation of Hard Times, then right into the self-reflection of Evil, Love.
Wow, yeah, you're right. It's not just random.
He's crafting an experience, a narrative.
And this mixtape, it didn't just, stay in this vacuum. It really impacted the whole hip-hop scene, especially coming out of Brooklyn.
Oh, massively. You can draw a direct line from AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded to what became known as the Beast Coast movement.
Okay, break that down for us.
So you've got this collective of artists coming up in Brooklyn around the same time. Guys like Joey Badass, the Flatbush Zombies, the Underachievers.
Right, yeah.
And they're all taking cues from what Steez was doing, that mix of personal storytelling and social commentary, but also that willingness to be vulnerable.
It's like he gave them permission to be real, to talk about the stuff that wasn't usually talked about in hip-hop.
Exactly. And it resonated with a whole generation of listeners who were hungry for something authentic.
And there's this theme running through the mixtape, this duality, the way the world sees you versus the struggles you're dealing with internally.
That's where I think Steez's philosophical side really comes through.
Okay, so Unpack that for us.
He's grappling with these big questions, external pressure versus internal turmoil, light and darkness, that kind of stuff.
And the fact that he was doing this as like a young black man in America, that adds this whole other layer of complexity.
He's not just talking about abstract philosophy, he's living it.
And he's doing it in a way that invites you into the conversation.
Oh yeah, he's not preachy. It's more like, come with me on this journey, let's figure this out together.
And I think that's why it's still so relevant today. It's not just a time capsule of 2012. It speaks to something universal.
Absolutely. We're all dealing with that duality to some degree, the pressure to be one way on the outside and the reality of what's going on inside.
Especially these days with social media and all that.
It's like that pressure's been amplified tenfold.
Right. So even though Steez was talking about this over a decade ago, it's almost more relevant now.
And he was doing it in a way that was super innovative for hip-hop at the time, like talking about mental health.
Yeah, that was not something a lot of rappers were addressing back then.
Tracks like Evil Love, Free the Robots. He was laying it all out there, the anxiety, the depression, all of it.
And it opened the door for so many other artists to do the same.
It's like he said, hey, it's okay to not be okay, and that resonated with a lot of people.
It was a game changer for hip-hop.
Yeah, it shifted the whole culture in a more positive direction, I think.
Now, there's this symbol that keeps popping up throughout the mixtape, the number 47. What's the deal with that?
Oh, 47 was huge for Steez. It was like his thing.
I've seen it on merch, tattoos, all over the place.
He saw it as representing balance, like yin and yang, the idea that opposing forces are interconnected.
Okay, can see how that ties into the whole mixtape, all the contrasting themes he's exploring.
Exactly. The darkness and the light, the despair and the hope, it's all part of the same picture.
It's like he was trying to make sense of the world, find meaning in all the chaos.
And he was only 19 when he was wrestling with all this. It's pretty mind-blowing.
And then, so tragically, just a couple months after putting this out into the world, he's gone.
Yeah, it's still hard to process, even all these years later.
Took his own life at 19. It was devastating for the hip-hop community, but it also really forced people to start talking about mental health in a more serious way.
It's like suddenly everyone had to confront this issue that had been kind of swept under the rug for so long.
And his legacy continues, not just in his music, but in things like the Steez Day Festival, which honors his memory and keeps that conversation going.
Yeah, his impact is undeniable. It's hard to imagine what hip-hop would look like today if Capital Steez hadn't made this mixtape.
It's a reminder that even though he's physically gone, his voice still speaks to us, and it's more important now than ever.
Absolutely. AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded. It's more than just music. It's a statement, a challenge, a testament to the power of vulnerability.
And it's a reminder to all of us to keep talking about these issues, to support each other, and to never be afraid to ask for help when we need it.
Because even in the darkness, there's always hope. And Steez's music is a beacon of that hope. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, like how much he did in such a short time.
Yeah, 19 years old. It's just, it makes you wonder what he could have accomplished if he'd had more time.
Seriously, the potential, it was just limitless, it felt like.
But even with just this one mixtape, he left behind something really special.
Oh, for sure. AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded, it's a classic.
It's aged so well, too. It's not like some of those albums from that era that sound dated now.
It's that honesty, man. It just cuts through all the noise, and it's still relevant, even more so in some ways.
That rawness, it's like you're right there in his headspace, going through it with him.
He wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, and that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just posturing, it's real.
And the way he uses the title AmeriKKKan Korruption, it's like he's setting up this whole critique of society.
Yeah, it's not just a personal diary, it's a statement about the world.
He's pointing at these systemic issues, the corruption, the injustice, and it's still going on today, maybe even worse.
And he's angry about it, rightfully so, but it's not just blind rage.
There's this thoughtfulness to it, like he's trying to understand the root of the problem, not just the symptom.
He's grappling with it, and he's inviting us to grapple with it alongside him.
And doing it all through music, which is like the most powerful way to communicate these kinds of ideas, I think.
Music hits you on a different level. It bypasses your defenses and goes straight to your soul.
It's universal, too. You don't even need to speak the language to feel it.
And Steez used music to create this, masterpiece, this tapestry of sound and words that just, it stays with you.
It's wild how relevant it still is. All these years later, it's like he was talking about the stuff we're dealing with right now.
He was ahead of his time, no doubt.
Especially with the mental health stuff. That was, taboo back then, especially in hip-hop.
It was seen as a weakness. You weren't supposed to talk about it.
And he just blew that whole idea out of the water.
He said, I'm struggling, and that's okay. And it gave so many other people permission to do the same.
Shifted the culture, man. That's a powerful legacy to leave behind.
He showed that you can be strong and vulnerable at the same time. That's a message we need to hear more of these days.
And he did it while still being, like, super lyrical. His wordplay is insane. He could really paint a picture with his words.
He was a poet, man, a storyteller, but he never lost sight of the message.
It was never just about showing off. It was about something deeper.
He had something to say, and he said it in a way that was both beautiful and thought-provoking.
One of the things I love about the mixtape is the way it flows. It's like a journey. You go through all these different emotions.
The sequencing, it's so deliberate. It's like a movie. You've got your ups and downs, your moments of tension and release.
You really get a sense of his journey, his struggles, his triumphs. It all feels so real.
Because it was real, he wasn't putting on a facade. He let us see the whole picture, the good and the bad.
And I think that's why people connect with it so deeply. It's like he's saying, hey, I'm just like you. We're all going through this together.
It's that shared humanity. That's what makes it so powerful.
And even though he's gone, his voice still resonates. His message is still relevant.
His music is a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles and that there's always hope, even when things feel dark.
His legacy is about inspiring change, about challenging the status quo, about using your voice to speak out against injustice.
He was a true visionary, and his impact will continue to be felt for generations to come.
AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded. It's more than just a mixtape. It's a blueprint for how we can use art to create a better world.
It's a testament to the power of music to heal, to inspire, to connect us all.
Steez may be gone, but his spirit lives on in his music and in the countless lives he touched.
And it's up to us to keep that spirit alive, to keep the conversation going, to keep fighting for a more just and equitable world.
One mixtape sparking a whole movement. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It's the reach of art, you know, how it just keeps rippling outward way beyond its time.
Steezy, he was so young, but he tapped into something that so many people felt, even if they couldn't put it into words.
He didn't just talk about it, he lived it. That vulnerability, it's like magnetic. It draws you in.
He let you see the parts that, we're usually told to keep hidden, the doubts, the fears, and it makes you realize, oh, everyone's got that going on.
Exactly. It's like that shared experience. It's what connects us as humans.
So even though we're talking about this mixtape, AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded, it's about more than just the music, right?
It's about how we live our lives, how we connect with each other, how we find meaning in a world that often feels pretty messed up.
It's about being real, authentic, even when it's hard.
Steez showed us that it's okay to not have it all figured out, and that's a powerful message, especially for young people.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways? What can we learn from Capital Steez and his legacy?
That vulnerability, it's not a weakness, it's actually a strength.
It's about letting people see the real you, not some curated version.
And by doing that, we open ourselves up to deeper connections, to real understanding.
Steez also showed us the importance of speaking truth to power, calling out injustice wherever we see it.
He didn't just sit back and complain. He used his voice to make a difference, even though he knew it wouldn't be easy.
And he inspired others to do the same, to fight for what's right, to stand up for the marginalized, to create a more just world.
His music is a call to action, a reminder that we all have a role to play in making things better.
So yeah, AmeriKKKan Korruption Reloaded, it's a masterpiece. It's a testament to Steez's talent, but it's also a roadmap for how to live a more meaningful life.
A life full of purpose, authenticity, and courage.
If you haven't listened to it yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It's a powerful experience, and it just might change your perspective on a few things.
And even if you have heard it before, give it another listen. See how it hits you differently now, knowing the full story.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.